What is going on, guys, and welcome back to another jungle guide. This time we're going to be going over the god Thor. Now, if you don't really jungle much on Smite, I have a basic jungle guide on my channel which is going to go over like a basic route for you to take. So if you're completely new to jungling, I'd recommend you go and take a look at that. But on screen you can see the topics I'm going to be covering in this video, so the advantages and disadvantages that Thor has, how to build him in different situations, and also some basic tips and tricks for when to ult, when to use abilities and stuff like that. The first point to note about Thor is the fact that he is an ability-based god, which means although you will be using his auto attacks in between abilities, your main source of damage is going to be your abilities and not those auto attacks. So his advantages are that he has crazy good mobility, like his ultimate is a global ultimate which is going to allow you to get in and out of fights, so you could use it as an escape if the fight is going badly, but you can also use it to initiate a fight from a distance, which sort of leads on to the third advantage there. He has great gank potential because his ultimate works from a distance, so they're not going to be able to see you coming if you ult from the right position, which I will go over later in this guide. And his one also allows you to teleport through walls, again attacking the enemy from where they can't see you. Second off, he has good CC, which is crowd control, with his 2, which is a stun, and also a physical wall, which means that even if you don't manage to stun the enemy, you can also wall off an escape route with them and be a real pain in the backside to them. His ultimate is also a small stun if you land directly on your opponents, which is what you're going to be aiming to do. So his disadvantages are that he is hard to secure damage with. His main source of damage are his 1 and his 3. Now with his 1, you're going to have to hit the enemies twice. You're going to have to get your hammer to go through them and then come back through them, which deals an absolute ton of damage. However, they can step out of the way, especially if your wall, which is your 2, is a low level. You're not going to be able to guarantee to hit them twice, which, as I said, will make it hard to secure damage, and obviously with your 3 you can just get stunned out of that, meaning that you won't be able to get all of those ticks off and secure the full amount of damage. So his other disadvantage is that I'm sure you've all experienced this when a Thor walls you off and blocks his own teammates. Now this is incredibly annoying, and I will be going over a bit of that later on in this guide on when and when not to use your wall, so to minimise the chance that you're going to annoy your teammates. So now for how to build Thor. Now on screen you can see his starter build, and I go over this in my basic jungle guide. You've got 2 options with this. You can either go Boots level 1 and Hand of the Gods level 1, or you can go Hand of the Gods level 2. Personally, I prefer option 1. I think it's way stronger over option 2, simply because it allows you to get Warrior Tabi online that much quicker and get that extra early damage. However, I do see people going with Hand of the Gods level 2 and doing just fine. So your core items, these are the items that you do not want to change. The only exception may be Shifter's Shield, which you could get later on, and that's not changing it, that's simply delaying it and getting one of the items on the next screen before that, depending on the situation, but I will go into that in a second. So your first item is Warrior Tabi. That's going to be your early source of damage and obviously movement speed. Now, as I've said many times, mobility is key in jungle, hence why Thor is so strong. Your second item, now please don't change this, get it second, Jotun's Wrath. It's incredibly important and incredibly useful. Not only does it give you a load of power and some penetration, it also gives you cooldown reduction, and as I said, Thor is an ability based god, and having cooldown reduction is going to be allowing you to use your abilities that much more often and just increasing your overall damage output and your usefulness to the team. Now the third item there is Shifter's Shield. Now off the start that gives you some power and a few protections. However, when you're over 50% health it's going to give you more power, and when you're below 50% health it's going to give you more protections, which is basically just adapting to the situation. That's why Shifter's Shield is such a good item, because it adapts to the situation for you. So now onto the more adaptable part of the build. Now your damage items are going to be Titan's Bane and Transcendence. Titan's Bane is basically a core item, you're almost always going to be getting that. The only time you might not get it is if the enemy team is very squishy and you don't need the penetration. However, that's not going to happen that often. Second item you could get if you want more damage is Transcendence. Now I know you're going to be getting this quite late on, probably 6th item or something like that, and I can probably hear you screaming at me now, oh, it's a stacking item, don't get it like last and you're not going to be able to get the stacks and it's useless. But that's not the case at all. Transcendence is a very good item. Despite the fact that it has stacks and you're getting it late, you can easily get those stacks by sitting on a lane for literally a minute or so, and even without the stacks it is still a very good item because of its passive turning 3% of your mana into physical power. If you work that out at level 20, it's an insane amount of power even without full stacks. Now for protections, Magi's Blessing, Spirit Robe, and Runeforged Hammer. Magi's Blessing is one of those items that you could get before Shifter Shield if needed. If you're getting CC'd a lot, then I would recommend getting Magi's Blessing as your third item after your Jotun's Wrath. For heaven's sake, don't get anything before Jotun's Wrath other than your Warrior Tabai. And it's really going to help you secure that damage. If you remember, I said your 3 you can get stunned out of. Magi's Blessing is going to protect you from that. You get the little bubble thingy once every 60 seconds, which is going to absorb a stun or something like that. Spirit's Robe is another really good item, which is going to give you a load of protections and allow you to be more tanky in fights if that's something that you need to incorporate into your build. As I said, this is situational, so if you're finding that you get forced out of team fights really early, get some protections, get Spirit's Robe, something like that. Runeforged Hammer is a way more situational item because it only gives you physical protection. So for example, if the enemy team is doing a lot of physical damage and not much magical damage, you could get Runeforged Hammer, which is going to give you those physical protections, but also its passive is going to give you more damage based upon your physical protection. So it's a great item if they do have a lot of physical damage dealers on their team and you want to protect yourself from those whilst being able to deal more damage back. Runeforged Hammer is 100% a good item to go with. Now, as much as this does cover almost every situation you'll face with Thor, it is Smite. There are a ton of different things that could happen, and it doesn't go over everything. So a couple of other things that may end up happening is if you're taking a ton of magical damage, you may decide to go Stone of Gaia if it's tick magical damage, or if it's burst magical damage, something like Bulwark of Hope. However, just sort of use your initiative, and this should cover you for the majority of situations. So now onto the tips and tricks section of the guide. Now earlier I mentioned how useful Thor's wand was when teleporting through walls to surprise enemies, and here you see me put it into use. I mean, my health was incredibly low, I easily could have died there. However, because Thanatos had no idea that I was there, I was able to pick up an easy kill. Now here's an example of me using my ult from a distance to surprise 2 enemies. They had no idea that I was here, and I was able to just completely annihilate them and get 2 really easy kills with the help of my teammates. Other good spots you can ult from are inside the Fire Giant and Gold Fury to ult onto the lanes either side of those. They're really good spots. Now this is probably the most important clip I have to show you, which is where I decided not to use my wall because it could have blocked my teammate off there and I could have ended up getting him killed. So sometimes it is just best to refrain from using that wall so that you don't annoy your teammates. Now here I waited for Hercules to push the target before I landed. Now I could have easily missed a Pwash if I'd ulted before that, so that was just some situational awareness. But also another thing to learn from that is I got way too close before I ulted. A Pwash probably heard me start ulting, so just bear that in mind and try and stay as far away as possible so as to give them as little notice that you're there as you can. Here's just another good example of when using your hammer through a wall gets you a really easy kill on a gank. Here a Pwash had no idea that I was there and I was able to pick up an easy kill. So that's it for the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and found it useful. Leave a like rating if you did and subscribe to see more. If you didn't, let me know why in the comments. I'm always trying to improve the guides based upon the feedback I get from you guys. And if you have any questions, leave those down in the comments as well, and I'll try and answer them as soon as possible. But other than that, guys, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.